I will ask Supervisor Rivas to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, salute. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to acknowledge certificate of posting.
So moved, Madam Chair. Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Public comment. I would like to invite anybody in the public to speak on an item, any item that is not on the agenda. So any cards?
Yes, Brooke Murphy.
I just wanted to say thanks for doing the HR 1776 for Clear Creek and signing all that, so thank you.
You're welcome.
D. Murphy.
Good morning. My name is Dee Murphy, and by now I know we all know each other pretty well. I want to thank you guys for doing the letter of no confidence for the BLM. I want to keep it in mind, so every year I will come back at least as often as you need me to, or I want to. I want to remind you that Clear Creek is very important, even if it's way far away. We have everybody that would love to have it open. I think you guys should keep fighting. I think you should work more with Sam Farr. HR 1776, it's a perfect number. What more could you have than your freedom to be able to ride a dirt bike in a place actually no one really goes except dirt bikers? I know that people like Margie have ridden there. People that we have a store, we've lost lots of money. All the businesses here, you could ask anybody because we've gone over this year after year. Unfortunately, temporary to me wasn't 2 years. Temporary sure isn't since 2008. We're talking 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. My kid is 17 years old. She was 10 when it closed. That's ridiculous that they are allowed to take the public land away from the public. And then they gate the road. And when they gate the road, that tells you can't be there. There's a gentleman that is Phil Lyman. He's a border supervisor. He's in Utah. Even though it doesn't really have to do with here, it really does, because what he did with his people, he took about 200 ATVs and they rode down the place that the BLM, gee, go figure, had closed because they decided it wasn't a trail and it wasn't the public land, it was their land. And I really believe that we should keep talking to Sam Farr, with Luis Alejo too, and both the mayor here and the city of San Juan Bautista, bless you. And let's keep it on the forefront, somewhere in there. I know it's not the most important thing, but it really is when you look at the big picture of how much it can really affect this community, both King City, here, the other side of the hill, because I know that people come from all over to go to Clear Creek, because Clear Creek dirt biking place is the best place that there is, and no one's ever been sick. And there is no proof of what the BLM and the EPA said. And I just want to let you know, keep working with Sam Farr. I'm so proud of him to have come around and been on our side now, which is good, because he needs to realize that you can't let the government take from the people. We kind of pay you. We get you guys going where you're going. We vote you in, we vote you out. I'm not saying you guys. I love all of you guys that fight for us. So keep that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speaker cards?
Yes, Mary Shaw Karan.
Good morning, Madam Chair and supervisors. In late January, when the oil industry's takings letters started arriving, our attorneys, Shute, Mahali, and Weinberger, remarked at how weak they were, really without much legal merit at all. We wondered why it took the oil industry so long to write these very lame letters. Why didn't they send these letters back in December or January? Well, recently the answer became clear. A newspaper reporter told us just a few days ago that the Butte County supervisors were planning to vote this February the 7th on a ban of fracking. But last week they got cold feet and they voted it down. What was it that frightened them? Well, they heard from Latham and Watkins. Remember them? They're the oil attorneys who wrote an analysis of the Citadel takings claim back in January to the county. And apparently they had been telling the Butte County supervisors that San Benito County was getting pummeled by a slew of takings claims that would bankrupt our county. We also heard recently from the city of La Habra Heights in Southern California. They're actually going to be voting this March the 3rd on an initiative very much like Measure J. And one La Habra Heights City Council member was quoted in her local paper saying she's worried that her city will face steep legal bills from oil companies suing if their initiative Measure A passed. You can probably guess who she's been talking to recently. So it appears that the takings claim letters that you received, the batch since late January, were probably orchestrated by the oil industry's attorneys for two purposes. One is to intimidate you, the San Benito County supervisors, and the other is to intimidate the Butte County supervisors and the voters in La Habra Heights who are about to vote on their initiative on March the 3rd. The California law, or our California law, is amongst the strongest in our nation in upholding the right of local governments to enact zoning and land use laws to limit industrial operations like oil and gas drilling. The oil industry probably realizes that Measure J will prevail in court, but just like the bans in New York, but they're using fear to intimidate local government officials and voters so that you won't even try to exercise your rights.
If you could close, please.
Okay? These takings claim letters are part of a campaign of fear, and I hope you'll see them for what they really are. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Andy Shaw Karan.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the supervisors. My name is Andy Shaw-Coron from 501 Ricardo Drive in Aromas. As Mary mentioned, in California, the rights of communities to determine their future and how land is used is the strongest in the nation. And whether that's by a vote of the supervisors or a vote directly by the people that the supervisors represent. In Measure J, it was in this case, it was a vote by the people that you represent. Very strong vote, 58.9%, in one of the highest turnouts in the county, in the whole state in terms of an electorate, surprisingly high. So the people really spoke loudly on this issue. Now, the letters that came in are, as Mary mentioned, very thin. First of all, Steve Coombs' letter from Patriot Resources talks about shutting down his operation because of the acid treatment of his wells. Dogger has made it very clear that routine acid treatment of wells is not the same thing as matrix acidization. So it doesn't do anything to his activities out there, unless, of course, he's doing matrix acidization, in which case he's doing it without permits from either the state or from the county. And you should probably ask him, are you doing these things without proper permits? I expect he'll say no, and therefore he really doesn't have a concern here. If he has a project that requires acidizing, he thinks so, he should apply for that project. And that's the case in all of these letters. Before you even think about exemptions, these people have to apply for a project. And the county has to determine whether Measure J prohibits those projects or not. And then they can apply for an exemption. If it's valid, you grant the exemption. If it's not valid, then they can sue you saying you're wrong. And if the courts ultimately decide that they were right and you were wrong, you still have the right to exempt them, and you don't have a takings issue at all. So the initiative was very well crafted. It gives you a lot of safety in this regard, and it was broadly supported by the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no other speaker cards. Okay, if you could come up, please.
Marvin Jones, Hollister, downtown Hollister. I have nothing in the oil industry fight, if you will, other than the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution says that if you, the San Benito County Board of Supervisors, takes property, you've got to compensate the owners. Process is you take a property, Measure J, they have to file a claim before they can sue you. That's that $1.2 billion claim. I bet they'd settle for $100 million. But in any case, last November when we voted to enact Measure J, I believe it was Santa Barbara County with their oil industry, offshore as well as onshore, had the same Measure P for them, written by the same law company that was instrumental in writing Measure J. And they voted it down severely because it would have impacted the county's revenue sources, county employment level. So they're both sides of this. Full disclosure, some counties voted it down, some counties voted it up. I'll remind you what I commented a while back. Now that you've enacted Measure J, you better start putting some reserves in your budget because just like Los Valientes, it's going to come home. It's going to be expensive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to address the board? Okay, we'll come back to department head announcements. CAO Espinosa?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we do have one announcement coming out of administration. We had a great three-day training last week on strategies of implementing change for higher performing organizations. Basically, some of the content that was in the material was evaluating standards of operation or hygiene and employee engagement. So there was a lot of information that was covered, and we look forward to continued work on this for the county.
Okay, thank you.
That was all.
And that's it for department head announcements. Okay. Board announcements, I'll start with Supervisor De La Cruz.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to thank my wife for my patience, or her patience. Took a long trip up to San Francisco, spent the night of Valentine's Day with her, and I got to tell you, I love San Francisco, but I love our community, San Benito County. It was a little bit different experience, but to me, San Benito County is the way to go. But that's all, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Rivas?
No announcements, ma'am.
Okay, Supervisor Batella.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank our CAO and our staff for having such a well-prepared retreat that we had last week. The presentations were very good. The dialogue amongst the board was very constructive, and I think it gives us a good path to try to achieve this coming year, and looking forward to having some success. And we just really, again, I want to emphasize on the road program that we developed that strategy, and hopefully that's a carry us forward for years to come. But thank you very much for the hard work.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Munzer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two items coming out of AMBAG. The Association of Monterey Bay Area Government is working on its 2015 ortho imagery project, which is a GIS project. So I want to just pass on the paperwork to our CAO and have him look over it, see if it's something that we need to be involved in.
Okay.
And they'll be making a presentation to staff. And then also AMBAG has a MOU with the Western Riverside Council of Government, developing a California Hero program, which is a low-interest loan for people to improve their houses for energy efficiency. So I will pass both of these on over to our CAO and let him look them over and see if we need presentations from the AMBAG people to inform us on them. And the only other thing I have was yesterday I attended the funeral of Charles Doan, a longtime employee of the U.S. Park Service and husband of Superintendent Karen Bettler Doan of Pinnacles, who passed away from his battle of cancer.
Our
It was a
condolences
well-
to their family.
Thank you.
Supervisor Munzer.
That is all.
All right. I have to echo what Supervisor Botello said. Thank you. The retreat was very well organized. There was a lot of conversation, a lot of planning, and we did lock in that we're going to have another one in probably July. So we'll continue to plan and set our goals and make sure that we address every concern and issue at length. And I have gotten feedback on the training that just recently happened for the department heads, and very, very good feedback. And they talked about bringing them together. It builds up the morale. They get to know what the other is doing, and it's a really good way to bring unity to the county, and they were very appreciative of that opportunity. So thank you for that. And I just want to mention that we as supervisors have a lot of commitments, as we all know, and we have all been appointed to committees and commissions that in our busy lives we have to try to make time to attend. It is critical, I know, for many of these that there is a quorum, and they send us emails or calls or letters saying that there will be a meeting, the time, and I just want to encourage all of us, including myself, that we respond to those calls so that they can plan accordingly, because our involvement is very essential, very important. They welcome us, and I just want to make sure that we're committed to those committees and commissions that we have been assigned to. And I also want to invite Jim from HHSA to join me and the mayor of Hollister to present to the city of San Juan Bautista information on the homeless committee that we're planning to start. We have it, but to make an official MOU. They are involved at intergovernmental, but it would be nice to inform the entire council. And if you can join us, we'll try to plan that and let them know what we've been doing, bring them up to speed, and invite them certainly to support us and participate in the committee and also in the future plans that we have. So, okay, thank you so much. And that is it for board announcements. For consent agenda, I have been asked to pull number 7, and I will be pulling number 1 and number 4. Any others at this time? Okay. Does the audience or the public want to pull any of the consent agenda items? Okay, I will ask for a motion for those remaining.
Motion to approve amended consent.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll start with item number 1. And let me open that up. And that is on page 6. Just give me a second if I could, please. And all I want to say on this one is that we need to be, I'm starting to get a complex because I was here. And I just want to make sure that all the comments from the Board of Supervisors under board announcements are considered. That was the day that I was selected to be chair, and this is not personal. I would like, even if it wasn't me sitting up here, that if there are comments from the Board of Supervisors, that they do get addressed. I mentioned goals and objectives for the coming year, and there was no mention of that. And I just want to make sure that the public is aware that we all have something to say, and it's important, and that we all, if there's going to be mention of comments from one supervisor, that all 4 supervisors, because we all take the opportunity to make sure that we make announcements on that day. So, thank you. That was all for that one. So I will make a motion unless there's comment from the public. I will make a motion to approve item number 1 on the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And then item number 4, I pulled that one because there was a date that needed to be, I believe it said that this was going to be effective December 15th, but I want to say that it should be December 14th. So let me go to that item. And that would be on page number 37. Yeah, it does say approved December 2nd, 2015 on the AIT. And since there was no other information regarding that, I just want to make sure that it is correct on the paperwork that is being approved. So, do we know?
I believe this is coming out of our HSA office.
Yes, it's
So this is
HHSA,
gonna
item
be
number 4.
Jim-
But it's really just a date change, Jim.
Okay.
Just make sure that the paperwork that, for this plan that we're approving does have the right date of
Okay.
2014, because
get-
I do believe it should be
We'll get that, yeah.
2014.
That's correct.
Okay? Any comments from the board on this item? Any comments from the public? Okay, I'll bring it back. I'll make a motion that we approve this item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item number 7, and that has been pulled by Supervisor Munzer.
I have no questions on it. I just needed to pull
We're just
it.
going to take a vote.
Yes.
Yes. But I always want to mention who has pulled that, so any comments from the audience on this item, item number 7? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for a vote.
I'll make a motion to approve item 7.
Okay, there's a motion. I will second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. 3-2 on item number 7. Noes from Supervisor Munzer and Supervisor De La Cruz. Okay, we'll start our regular agenda, and we'll start with item number 9, and I'll ask our CAO to introduce that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, per our discussion at our board retreat on February 10th, under organization, this item was considered, and the item before us is to amend our current ordinance, Article 1 of Chapter 3.01 of the Title 3 of our San Benito County Code. Per our discussion, we're here today to go ahead and read in the title of ordinance for the record, item 1, as well as 2, requesting your board to make a motion to accept introduction and waive further reading of ordinance, and B, continue the matter until March 3rd, 2015, at our next board meeting for adoption. So this is just to kind of clean up our current ordinances with regards to reimbursement for the grand jury.
Okay, any comments from the board? Comments from the public regarding this item?
Yes, first speaker is Dean Jett.
Good morning. My name is Dean Judd, and I'm a current member of the San Benito County Grand Jury. The background information provided with the proposed ordinance amendment lacks any rationale for the change. Sorry. It only states that the amendment is in compliance with state law. I have several points I'd like to make concerning rationale and the impact. 1, about 6 months ago, shortly after our jury was impaneled, the foreperson notified the county administrative officer that our budget was insufficient and that we would run out of funds at the beginning of 2015. At that time, the CAO gave assurances to our foreperson that the problem would be taken care of. 2, this proposed amendment apparently is in response to the budget shortfall. However, it does nothing to solve our current budget problem. 3, today, we are out of funds. so the jury's work is suspended. The jury is not allowed to incur expenses over the budget. If we meet, we incur expense. So until funds are available, we don't meet. We are stopped. 4, the 2 reports required by law each year will not be completed unless funds are quickly allocated so we can restart our meetings. This amendment does nothing in that regard. 5, as of last Thursday, there were 16 members of the county grand jury. There may be fewer today. We were supposed to have 19 members. Last year, we were also below full complement. Recruitment is difficult. Some jurors have spent many hours of unpaid time recruiting at community events. Yet we are still under our specified 19 members. And 6, most of the time I spend on the grand jury is attending meetings of the 2 committees on which I serve. While all members serve on the jury to be of service to the community, the current jury pay and mileage reimbursement provide a modicum of reward for what is often difficult and time-consuming work. But if you approve this amendment, you will remove even that small recognition of our service. Recruitment and retention will suffer. In conclusion, I urge you to reject this proposed amendment. At the very least, table it until you review the current and future financial needs of the grand jury, review what other counties are doing, and in particular, immediately allocate sufficient funds so we can complete our current term. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Austin.
Good morning. My name is Steve Austin. I hate to read things, but time. I'm a current member of the San Benito County Civil Grand Jury. I'm in my first year. As was alluded to in the first speaker, I have no plans of resigning over this at all. I'm not in it for the money. After all, when I first started the grand jury, I didn't even know we got paid. The grand jury's purpose is to protect the public interest. Our primary function is to investigate city, county, government, school districts. These civil investigations result in recommendations for improvements to save taxpayer dollars and improve services. We make sure that money for bond measures is spent the way the voters want it spent. We ensure that our inmates, both juvenile and adult, are treated humanely. We check to see that there are no mismanagement of funds by any public agency. In short, we are the watchdogs for the public. And we do all this for $15 a meeting and some mileage. Quite a bargain for the people of San Benito County. To do this, the grand jury is divided into committees, each of which concentrates on careful and diligent investigation of certain departments or functions of government. These committees study complaints submitted by the citizens of San Benito County, visit various facilities, investigate records and documents, draw conclusions regarding the operation of local governments, and meet with officials. Penal Code 890 specifies the pay for grand jurors and allows local government to pay higher fees and mileage rates. Some 22 years ago, in 1993, then State Attorney General Dan Lundgren was asked to render an opinion on the compensation mandated in PC 890, as the mechanics of it were a little vague. Lundgren concluded that compensation was only for sessions of the entire grand jury. Compensation for committee meetings, investigations by less than full grand jury, and training sessions may be authorized by the County Board of Supervisors pursuant to Section 6809(1) of the Government Code. I would argue that even as a committee member, we do in fact represent the entire grand jury, as the other grand jury members depend on the information that we get in committee. In today's agenda, Mr. Espinoza wrote the attached ordinance will amend the San Benito County Code to be consistent with state law in that it would compensate grand jurors the minimum amount required by state law pursuant to Penal Code 890. Our investigations are done in committee, not as an entire group. Most places we investigate cannot accommodate 16 grand jurors walking through at one time, nor do many of the people we talk to feel comfortable talking to a room full of people. Handling investigations by committee allows us to maximize the amount and effectiveness of our investigations. Taking away funds for committee meetings will certainly impact our effectiveness because logically the amount of committee meetings will naturally go down. PC 890 allows the Board of Supervisors to pay more than what the minimum is, and I'm sure that the previous arrangement was instrumental in helping to ensure that our grand jury would perform up to its usual high standards. Imagine you or any other employee who comes to work one day and finds out that management is cutting your pay. What kind of message does that send to the employee? What kind of message would that send to you if your pay were suddenly cut? What does that tell you about your value as an employee? I respectfully ask you to continue with the current arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jean Hopp.
Members of the board, excuse me. My name is Gene Hopp. I became a grand jury member 2 months ago. At my first grand jury meeting, I was appalled at learning of the budgetary problems impacting the grand jury operations going forward. The problem has been addressed several times with county administration by the grand jury with no meaningful response. Instead of fixing the budget problem, county administration has chosen instead to propose an ordinance based, it appears, largely upon a 22-year-old opinion. I believe the intent of this proposal is to severely impact the lawful duties of the grand jury, and I strongly urge the board to reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Healy.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and Board. To help clarify the issue, there are individuals within this room who have no idea what the responsibilities of the grand jury are and why the California legislation has put it in and why it should be supported. Because the grand juries work. They can do what no other group or individual can do. Thoroughly, systematically, and without bias, delve into the actions and policies of local government entities and officials to evaluate their effectiveness in providing services to the people that they are supposed to serve. And if corruption or willful misconduct is uncovered, the grand jury can take steps that can lead to an official's removal from office. We do not report to the supervisors. We even do not report to the Superior Court judge here. Even the Attorney General has no control over an individual grand jury. We are an entity by ourselves. What I see happening is that a lot of people do not understand Article 1, Section 25, California Constitution 1850, formed and empowered the grand jury system from the day that this state was first formed. The budget is the grand jury's budget is provided by the county general fund, and the sitting grand jury could and should provide information to the budget. We were not asked. We were never contacted what the budget should be, and no one had an idea what was the previous years and what caused the increase in budget. We were never asked. The grand jury's need for facilities, equipment, and supplies and training was never asked. A poorly funded grand jury will not be as effective as it could be. If you hold the purse strings, you can control the outcome. Actually, the grand jury cannot exceed its budget, as was mentioned. But also what I found out while reading this up, there's a PC code 938.4 that the county council should look into. It states, the Superior Court shall arrange for a suitable meeting room and other support as the court determines it is necessary for the grand jury. The county must, from their existing resources, and shall absorb all costs incurred by the court as a result of this section to have us have our own room. We meet at Mars Hill, and we talk confidential information. So I just wanted to make sure that the county council understands that they've been non-compliant for 16 years. It was first approved in 1999, and it has not had action since then. I will follow up with a note to the Attorney General. We contacted 5 different times this organization and the Superior Court in telling them what our budget was, what it should be. We've received no action. The last one we met, the CAO said, I will get back to you. That was January 30th. May I have a little bit of time, please?
If you could just summarize, please.
Okay, I'll summarize it. I'll go right into my points. Here's what I believe, that I'm presenting my own opinion. Why is the San Benito County Administration not responding to the request of the grand jury to do additional funding? We have not heard from them. 2, why is the San Benito County Administration changing reimbursement schedules after we've contacted them 5 times? Just to give you a quick information, website, Santa Cruz pays $15 per day for all meetings, and the mileage is 56 cents a mile, which matches ours. Monterey County, $15 per day for all types of meetings and 56 cents a mile. Interesting, matches ours. Santa Clara County, $20 per day for all types of meetings and mileage reimbursements, more than ours. As an average grand jury member, I make $60.66 a week, roughly 15 to 20 hours worth of work. So I make $4.40 an hour. It's a cheap buy. Why does the county administration want to reduce the typical payments, and what is the intent and purpose of this action? It was never stated. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Gutierrez.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Michelle Gutierrez. I'm also on the grand jury. This is my 2nd year. I just would like to reiterate what my fellow grand jury members have spoken today. We work very hard as grand jury members, and we take our job very serious. The amount of money that we are paid, it does not compensate for the work that we do, so we must be in it for the heart of the work that we do. So I just want to say that please look over the ordinance. Please just consider the work that us grand jury members do, and we have quite a few reports that are hanging in limb right now that we cannot, and Lord knows if we'll be able to complete because of this problem that we're having. Some grand jury members may quit, and we're having difficulty getting 19 members already. And for us to lose these members because of this issue here, it just seems ridiculous, and please just reconsider changing the ordinance. Thank you.
Rohit Sharma.
Good morning. My name is Rohit Sharma, resident of San Benito County since 1996 and proud to be serving a 2nd term on the civil grand jury. The grand jury has 3 primary functions. We serve as a watchdog for the county, overseeing local government. We hold the power to remove elected officials with just cause. And on rare occasions, we can be sworn in to serve as a criminal grand jury. We are a vital part of the system of checks and balances. We are told time and time again our service is greatly appreciated and valued. The truth of the matter is that it is a thankless job, and even more so with your intended actions. While we were led to believe that we are an asset to the community, we are being treated as a burden. Although we are not elected officials like yourselves, but citizens appointed by the court, we both share the same purpose, to serve our community. The county administration office's suggestion to limit our meetings, carpool whenever possible, and only to get reimbursed for out-of-county interviews is insulting, indicating our committee meetings are frivolous. I fear your intended actions may cause current members to resign and deter future members from serving, leaving the county with no grand jury. What then? Amend another ordinance eliminating the grand jury altogether, and explain to the state why San Benito County is the only county in California unable to sustain a grand jury. I have here in front of me the grand jury's first report to be reviewed by county council. There are at least 9 other investigations near completion. A lot of hard work and numerous hours spent by my fellow jurors, many of which are in attendance today. We don't just want to be heard, but rather listened to. Do the right thing. Do not amend this ordinance.
Marvin Jones.
Mr. Jones, did you have a card? We don't want to leave you out.
Me coffee, Marvin.
Marvin Jones again. Penal Code 890 establishes a floor for compensation for grand jury members. Vary from state to state, or county to county. We're pretty much in line. If we have 2 meetings a day, we only get reimbursed for 1. Santa Clara pays $20. We only do 15, but we're in line there. So this, again, Penal Code 890 establishes a floor for compensation of grand jurors. If you approve this one, you will change that floor to a ceiling. That's not the way to do it. I hope you do not enact this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Meeks.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors, Madam Chairman. I'm John Meeks, past member of the grand jury, past foreman of the grand jury. I also am against the change of the compensation agreement within the law. The reason I am is because we are a bedroom community of the Silicon Valley. Whether you like that or not, that's what we are. And a lot of the people that we draw from the grand jury are everyday citizens who work up in the Silicon Valley. All of you, all of the county offices, all of the city schools, all the county schools, sheriff's department, everything operate during the day. That means that anybody on the grand jury that works up in Silicon Valley has got to take off work that day to be able to come and perform any of the interviews or any of the investigations or anything that needs to be done. They deserve some kind of additional compensation. You're going to put a hammer into their ability to perform the job that you're asking them to do and what the state's asking them to do, to be a watchdog. So I encourage you not to approve this ordinance change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty Richmond.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Please forgive my voice. I've been down and out with a cold, and so I'm kind of squeaky. Yes, I think that phase of it is gone. In the interest of full disclosure, I have an item in front of the grand jury, but I'm sure what I'm going to say is not going to have any influence on how the grand jury views my whatever submission I make. I served a term as a member of the grand jury, and I think you all know that the $15 you get, this royal $15, taxable $15, is merely a symbol. It has nothing to do with compensation. But symbols are important. When you develop a symbol or a lack of a symbol, it's symbolic. You're sending a message. You send a message by what you say. You send a message by what you do. You send a message by the apparent importance you put on things, whether they're important or not, whether you can find the time to go do it, whether you make a speech, whether you, as the chairman mentioned this morning, whether you show up for your meeting, whether there's a quorum or not. Those all send a message. Now, it isn't the $15. Maybe some of the people who are on the wrong end of this will disagree with me. But it's the $15. You can't compensate somebody $15 for a meeting and say, well, we're giving you fair compensation. This is not compensation. This is nothing but a symbol. Symbolically, you're saying there's some value to what you do. And I think every meeting of every grand jury subcommittee has value because they couldn't function any other way. There's no way 19 or 16 people are going trompsing through the jail or trompsing through the juvenile detention facility and do their job. So when you say, well, you're not getting this compensation, that's a message. When you frivolously, and I've seen it before, and I'm not accusing you specifically, when boards frivolously answer a grand jury comment that they've put in 100 hours in making, and the answer is basically take it and shove it, okay, which I've seen in nicer language. That's what it essentially means once you read it. Once you read the answer, you're sending a message, and that message is not welcome here. Criticism, not welcome here. Transparency, not welcome here. citizen input, not welcome here. None of that's welcome here. Change the message. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. No other. Okay. Anyone else, please come up.
Andy Shaw, Coron, 501 Ricardo Drive. I guess I'm in agreement with some of the folks that I normally disagree with. Generally, the grand jury plays an incredibly important role in keeping government honest, and having somebody who's not embedded in these organizations to get a good hard look and see what is working right and what's working wrong. I worked for 20 years for the Department of Corrections at Soledad Prison, and it was the grand jury that often highlighted some of the abuses that were happening there that end up costing us all a great deal. I think that you need to send a signal in this county that you want to have the highest standards of openness for government, and that you want to make sure that what you do here is fully accountable, and for that you need a robust grand jury, and you need to send a signal that you support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for any questions or comments. Supervisor Batella?
Yes, I do have a comment. And first off, I've appeared before the grand jury a number of times, so pretty much almost once a year since I've been in office. And I have told them at that meeting, and I'm going to say it again, I think it's an absolutely essential organization that serves the people of San Bernardino County. And we certainly feel the need for the work that is accomplished by that group. With that said, we do have a budgetary problem. And I find it hard to believe that, you know, we're not aware of the budget process that this county has in the late spring and adoption in the early summer. And the money that we allocate for every department and the deliberations is very transparent, ordinarily takes over a couple of days, and it's part of our governmental process, and we expect every single department to be within their budget. And that should include the grand jury. And if not, I, as one supervisor, would support, you know, reconsideration of their budget if it's properly outlined why more funds are needed. There has not been a major discrepancy or change in the grand jury's budget for a number of years. And, you know, here we are in February, and we've blown through the entire budget. And, you know, some level of accountability needs to take place. If it was any other department, the grand jury probably would be investigating why you've blown through your entire budget in a half a year, and rightfully so. All I'm asking as one supervisor is some level of accountability and, you know, to work with the county and its available revenues, because that's what we expect out of every department. And I don't think that's too much to ask for. And knowing that our budget process is in June, so the foreman or the judge agrees to the budget allocated by this county or doesn't agree, so we could deliberate whether or not you have the resources available to do your work, which is absolutely vital. Madam Chair, I don't know if we necessarily need to pass this today or form an ad hoc committee to work with the court or the judge to find out what the right level of compensation, but I think there still needs to be accountability, how much is being spent, and why. And that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Supervisor Rivas?
Right. It sounds like we need to have a grand jury investigation of why the budget's run out. No, but I think we all appreciate what the grand jury does. I agree with my colleague, and certainly this is a concern for our board. But certainly we have to fix the problem. So how we fix the problem, I don't know. I know our budget is tight, but certainly the work that the grand jury has to accomplish needs to be accomplished. It needs to get done. We have to do what is necessary. So whether we do an ad hoc a committee, whether we approve the resolution, Madam Chair, it's your call.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor De La Cruz?
Madam Chair, I believe that we should fund them to the end of this fiscal year, and kind of in line with my other two fellow supervisors said is, once the budget process comes into the way, hopefully there will have already been a subcommittee or some kind of grand jury review looking into it, why the dollars are needed, and see if we can reach some point. I do believe that the grand jury is important. I do believe they're another set of eyes to our community that we definitely don't want to shut their eyes. We definitely want to help them out and do what's best interest of the community. So I will support continue funding it is right now with some side of control by the administration, and then during the budget process, hopefully this subcommittee or someone will be in place to give a recommendation to the board of supervisors once we go through the budget process.
Okay. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My concern is when our watchdog agency is not watching their own budget. I have concerns about that. One of the speakers got up and said, how would you feel if you showed up for work and was told there's no more money for your salary? We've had to tell a lot of county employees that exact things over the last few years because there was no money. The other thing, in one of my discussions with the grand jury and the committee, they asked me, who am I accountable to? And my answer was to the voters of San Benito County, specifically the voters of District 4. What I heard today was the grand jury feels they're not accountable to anybody. That is wrong. Our form of government, every process of the government is accountable to somebody. You're accountable for your budget, to live within your budget, to set the example for everybody else. I will support an ad hoc subcommittee to look into this. If we don't go that way, then I'm ready to support this ordinance. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate the comments that have been made by the grand jury. And yes, we as an agency, and I know other agencies in the county, have made great changes, important changes because of what you have brought forward. So we do take your work very, very seriously, and we do appreciate it. But like Supervisor Botello said, we have a lot of other departments and units who have to live by their budget, and that is the reason why we set them, because we need to live by them, and we need to make sure that there are constraints. Otherwise, if we did this with every department, who knows where we would be? Because we would be approving, additional funds that certainly shouldn't be the way we do business. And so with that being said, I just want to say that maybe what we could do is put a timeline on this new ordinance, because that ordinance is a state ordinance, and it will provide us with an opportunity to limit what we spend. And maybe the budget can be different come July, but maybe this ordinance really should take place at the if not sooner, at least no later than July the 1st. So I would support passing the ordinance, but making sure that we wait until the budget year to get it going. And in the interim I will take the advice of the rest of the board, and if an ad hoc committee is necessary, and I'm going to look to our CAO. I know that there has been conversation. It was said that we haven't met, but I believe that you have discussed this issue with them. If they're meeting at Mars Hill, that's not where they need to meet, because when we got our building at Technology Park, we made sure that there was room for you and for your files there. So you want to just...
Yeah, I wouldn't mind commenting on that. Yes, we have met on more than one occasion to discuss location. I know that they have been at a facility or an area where they can log files for many years. I believe it's quite a few years that they don't really have a place to go. So we have been working diligently with the facility committee to discuss that, looking at locations. We've actually started the process already. Our Public Works Director has been working on that. We've actually brought in an architect to redesign 2301 Technology Parkway in the 4A area to add some office space and a lock location for them. So, we're anticipating that's going to be about $15,000 for that. So that's well above what their budget allocation was, but we were doing our part to get a location for them.
And that'll come out of our capital reserve fund.
It's going to be coming out of the county non-budgeted item for them, so it's going to be outside of that. So we are looking, and the plan is to actually have something, hopefully within this calendar year, to have a location for them. They do actually meet at 2301 Technology Parkway in the actual large conference area.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Supervisor Botello?
Yeah, I have a question. Whether we pass this ordinance today or not, besides the matter, what are we talking about? How much money needs to be allocated to get through this year, this fiscal year, on top of the money that I imagine it's come from contingency, but how much more funding
Madam
is
Chair,
that?
if I may.
Yeah.
So
excuse me, our CAO has the floor. Thank you.
I can answer any of these questions.
That's okay. He will be addressing. Thank you. CAO?
So with one of our meetings, we actually did meet, and we discussed finances, their budget. Their budget currently, again, is almost expended. Their budget, I just wanted to share with your board the actuals in 2009, 2010. The actual spent was $18,700 plus dollars. In 2011-12, $17,200. In 2012-13, $11,000 actually spent out of their budget. And in 2013-14, $19,400 plus. So our budget for them this year is $19,500, which they were at 82.15% as of December. So we did meet with them in January, as they actually stated. They are requesting $12,821 to get them through the year. With the additional, obviously, we've been working on that, hiring an architect and so forth, with the actual expansion, so that's another approximately $15,000. So we're looking at about $28,000 total in addition to their $19,500. So it's well over 100% of what they're budgeted for. So our concern is, obviously, in administration is, like any other department, we got to manage the budget, and that's our job in administration.
Yeah, if every department came back this time of the year and asked for 75% more of their budget, certainly that would not be acceptable. So we have to treat everybody fairly. Supervisor De La Cruz, you had a comment, and then Supervisor.
Oh, if I could maintain the floor and
Yes,
follow
go ahead,
up,
please, and then Supervisor De La Cruz.
Thank you. So has there been any discussion or dialogue, which I would hope, as far as maybe trimming back some of these costs that have been incurred going forward, or is there just, well, this is the pace we're spending money, and that, just write the blank check?
Yes, there has been. And one of my questions to the grand jury was maybe reducing the amount of individuals attending the meetings. I do know that it's an important thing what they do, but there are quite a few that they actually have going on. With regards to special investigations, those types of activities. So instead of having 6 or 7 or maybe more individuals attending those, maybe reduce that down to 2 or whatever the minimum amount that can be used, so that way that the cost will be reduced, and then reporting back to the group. So there has been some discussions with regards to that. They, and they could probably comment on their beliefs and their needs of continuing status quo. But there has to be some change. There has to be a mechanism in place at the beginning of the year that, with regards to the budget. There has to be something in place where there's a way to manage that and keep it in check. So.
I certainly don't want to see us set a new ceiling at $28,000. That's, I think we need to allocate more money to the grand jury's mission, but I think they, on the other hand, have to understand that that's not the new ceiling. Thank you.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. My belief is that let's reach some type of compromise deal with and let's give them some money to run the year, and hopefully with our CEO and their foreman work out some type of a relationship. It's their prerogative. They want to have 3 people in a committee or 15 people in the committee. As long as we give them some budget to carry them through the end of the year, and hopefully they can show a good faith effort by coming to see Rains Healthcare. Okay, we know we got this much money. We know the board approved us with this much money. Let's see what we can work to in the year. At that time, it gives us enough time to develop some policies, and this is a starting one we have right now today. When we do go through the budget process, then it is a clear indication that for next fiscal year, they're going to have this much money. And if we set a benchmark on which how the committee makeup will be, because we really don't want to infringe on their ability to investigate or do the work by saying you can only have 3 to a committee member. If they want to have 10 to a committee member, they know there's only so many dollars available, and then it's at their prerogative. It's at their budget level. They're responsible for the budget level. So they need to plan out for the rest of the year how they're going to do it for next year. I just don't want to cut them right now. We're almost close during the budget process. We got, 3 or 4 months to the end of this fiscal year. I'd rather hop them out. They know that they're on notice today. And trust me, I can see it in their face. They're on notice today. And then we can work together. And they know that they have a due date of July 1st when we go through the budget process, that if they're not willing to work with us, then we will implement a budget for them.
Okay, so it sounds like I'm hearing that we do want to continue to help them, or we want to help them till the end of the year. But we will have to ask our CAO to figure out where that money's going to come from, how we're going to achieve this, and how much it can be. And so what I'd like to do is we have another meeting on the 3rd, I believe, of March. Bring this item back with a recommendation from our staff as to how much we can afford to give for the rest of the year, fiscal year, and bring back the ordinance, and we will discuss it further or maybe pass it effective for the July 1st fiscal year, if that's okay with the rest of the board.
I definitely think that we need to bring back the ordinance along with that discussion, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Absolutely.
I
Very
would
good.
totally support
Absolutely,
that.
yeah.
Because we got to have something in place that, to control our budgetary, limitations on our side, too.
Okay, and what we'll do is maybe Supervisor De La Cruz and myself will meet with the CAO to help out in the discussion of this, and as an ad hoc committee, just till the next meeting. So if we can do that, we'll make arrangement.
Thank you, Madam
Okay?
Chair.
All right, very good. So we'll continue then this item until March the 3rd, I believe.
Do you need a,
I'd like to get a motion, please.
so move?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
You got that, Janet?
Okay, we'll move on to item number 10. No, I'm sorry, we have a certain protocol for our meetings, and we've already closed public comment. Thank you. Item number 10, County Council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Agenda item number 10 is a discussion regarding the review of the draft tree protection ordinance, and the Assistant County Counsel, Barbara Thompson, will present this.
Barbara?
In December of 2014, the board approved the extension of the temporary moratorium on cutting and mature trees in the urban area of San Benito County, with a direction that it be brought back to the board within 90 days for a look at a more permanent tree protection ordinance. This is the first time that this ordinance that would last long-term is being brought to the board for its consideration for direction on how to proceed. The procedure is today, if the board can either give further direction on what it would like to see in a tree protection ordinance, or if it's basically satisfied with the direction of the ordinance at this time, it would make the CEQA findings set forth in Attachment A and adopt the resolution of intention. Procedurally, it's scheduled to go to the Planning Commission tomorrow night for their review and approval of the draft ordinance, and it would be brought back to the Board of Supervisors on March 17th. If the board wishes to make changes today, then we would bring it back for further direction from the board at, for example, the March 3rd meeting, and then it would go back to the Planning Commission in March and then back to the Board of Supervisors in April. That's if the board has any changes. In drafting this ordinance, we've tried to make it reasonable on the amount of administrative burdens on the public and staff while still providing greater protections for mature trees in the urban areas of San Benito County. The main changes behind the memo and the final draft of the ordinance, there's a redlined version to show exactly how the ordinance has been changed from the temporary moratorium. One of the main issues that we considered, even though we're calling this a permanent tree protection ordinance, is how long it should actually last. We've put in a draft expiration date of December 31st, 2020. That's basically a little over 5 years. It can either be shorter or longer, but the mechanism or the reasons for that is if a future board does not like the tree protection ordinance, it will just expire at that time. It would not need CEQA to have it be removed. Like we went through this with the hill protection ordinance and the growth management ordinance.
Yes, go ahead and ask.
Yeah, you read my thought, because I remember, actually Supervisor Patello and I, maybe, Madam, you were part of the group too, the hillside ordinance was implemented with, I think, 3 votes, and then when Supervisor and I, Patello and Marcus, was Donnie Marcus, I think, got elected, we had a hard time removing that.
Yes.
It was like, you can't do it because now it's a CEQA issue, therefore you need at least, what, 4/5 votes? So this is a simple 3-vote down, correct?
Actually, when you wanted to remove it, it still would be a 3-vote, but you would actually require a CEQA process, which...
Right. And this one doesn't require a CEQA process?
This one would expire automatically with no vote of the Board of Supervisors, so it would have to be brought back for renewal if that's what the board wanted at that time. It's easier to renew it than it is to remove it, actually.
Well,
so,
I'm sorry you lost me.
Yeah.
Sorry you lost me.
Yeah.
Okay. If we approve it today,
yes,
and if we put a sunset in it, say 5 years, then that automatically sunsets without going through a CEQA review process, correct?
That's right. It automatically happens.
That's weird, because, so if they would have put a 5 years on the hillside ordinance, it would not have to go through a CEQA process?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And so this is our first real, we have the woodlands ordinance, but this is our first tree protection ordinance for the urban area. And it will give us more time to explore how much burden it is on administratively, whether the board in the future wants to keep it, all those details that haven't been worked out in depth yet. So because the temporary moratorium is due to expire in another 10 months, and actually it's probably more like 7 months at this point, this expands it, but it doesn't make it a permanent ordinance of the board. And so in 5 years, the board would have to take that further action. Now, that date's flexible. It could be shorter or longer, but that's how it's drafted at the present time.
Supervisor Patella?
I'm sorry, Barbara,
Yes.
to interrupt you
Yeah,
again
no.
with another question. How did the staff or whoever was drafting this decided on the 5 years, and it's just regulated to R1 zoning?
R1 and RM, I believe.
Okay.
Yes. It was arbitrary. We debated 10 years, we debated 20 years. 5 years is a shorter period of time, so it's easy to renew.
Not 3 years or?
It could be 3 years. It could be any length of time that the board wants.
Okay.
I thought that the board might want it shorter rather than longer, so originally it was longer and would expire, I think, maybe 10 years from now, but we kept it a little bit shorter, but it could be a different date if the board would prefer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It was just an arbitrary date to throw out there for the board's consideration. Okay, the other second major change is that we've made an exemption for trees within fully fenced back and side yards of a developed residential parcel. This means that if somebody has a tree in their backyard and it's fully contained in their backyard, the trunk is fully within the fenced backyard, that they could remove it without going for a tree removal permit. The next one was to determine whether there should be an automatic exemption for removal of a certain number of trees per parcel per certain amount of time. Currently, it's drafted that one tree could be removed per parcel every 5 years. That allows minimal amount of work to be done on a parcel, such as if there's a tree that somebody wants to remove and they're not doing a great deal of work, it's just one tree. It allows minimal, gradual changes to a parcel, but does not allow clear cutting of the trees or removal of a lot of trees without going through the tree removal process. The next major change is, because this is going to be a more permanent ordinance, we have to have a permit process to allow for exemptions to the ordinance. The moratorium was basically a strict prohibition about cutting prohibited trees, and there was an exemption for certain trees that were not subject to the ordinance. But if they were subject to the ordinance, the moratorium had no provision to work around the ordinance to get an exception. This new ordinance would have if the tree is not exempt, there's a way to actually go and request a permit to remove the tree. And there are certain criteria that are listed for the planning director to consider and whether to grant or remove that grant or deny that permit, and that would be subject to appeal to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors after the Planning Commission. And then the last change was the definition of trees. It's included in the definition of tree section, in the definition section. We made a specific exemption for fruit and nut trees. I should note that, so it includes the following fruit trees are just exempt. It's almonds, apples, apricots, avocados, cherries, chestnuts, mandarins, nectarines, olives, oranges, peaches, pears, etc. I am going to clarify on the pears, it's going to be fruit pears, not flowering or decorative pears. So that will be one change that you see in the final version that's brought back for you. We also debated at the staff level to whether to increase the number of inches of the trees that are subject to the ordinance from 8 inches to 12 inches. But the feedback that I've received is that 8 inches is more protective and that we should keep it at 8 inches for the present time. The final version that's brought back to the Board of Supervisors will have a paragraph in it also that fees can be set by the Planning Department to cover the cost of processing a permit. And that would probably be by resolution or ordinance. So I throw this out for the board's consideration, the public's comments, and any direction that you would like to give regarding this ordinance.
Thank you, Barbara. Any questions from Barbara before I open it to the public? Okay. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Comments from the public regarding this item?
Yes, Bill Healy?
As a homeowner, newly homeowner here in Hollister area in Ridgemark, first of all, the trees are what's valuable to the property. Anybody who's in real estate will tell you trees add value to a house. What I do not like is when the opportunity of a developer or anybody comes in and wants to be able to take out the trees because it improves their monetary gain by removing an obstacle of building homes or plants. The trees support all of the animals in the area. They support the beauty of the area. They provide shade. And they forget one thing, I'm sorry. They forget they give us oxygen. That's not that important, I guess. But I think this should be extended. And it also should be continued as a good ordinance for the county. Yes, as Ridgemark, I benefit from it because that's part of where this came from. And as you saw from there, there was an example of somebody who decided to do what he wanted to do. So I support it. Also, on another issue, your action on last item, the grand jury is disbanding. Your action has done that. We are sending a letter to the Attorney General, the Superior Court presiding judge.
We're going to have this item next meeting. So if you would like to talk about it then. Thank you. Any others from the audience regarding this item? Mr. Jones?
Well, I have other speaker cards.
Oh, you do? Okay. We're going to go with the others that have been submitted, and then we'll call you up. Thank you.
Carol Detra?
Madam Chair and Supervisors, my name is Carol Dutra, and I am a resident of San Benito County. I came here today to ask that you pass the ordinance that has been proposed and send it on to the Planning Commission for their action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Valcazar?
He can pronounce the last name when he comes up, please.
Good morning, Dan Balcazar. I'm a Ridgemark resident. I took some notes here, but I'll try to keep it brief just to respond to Barbara Thompson's recommendations. I'm here in support of the tree ordinance. I think we all know, what generated this problem or the purpose of the ordinance. In listening to what Barbara Thompson said, I think the main thing that concerns me is the time, the expiration, the idea that, if we give it a sunset clause, it's easier to get rid of, or we don't have to work so hard to go the other way. And I understand that that's no fun. But I also want you to consider the timeline of a development process. This came through because of a developer, the main problem here that both the county and the courts are addressing right now. So if you were a developer and you want to develop an area, it's going to take years. Whether you sell it to another developer, it's going to take years. So by the time it's done, several years have gone by, and that sunset clause may have happened. Some people hope for that. A lot of stuff we can't say here in public, but I would just suggest that you make the timeline, consider the timeline long enough if you are going to consider a sunset clause, so that any developer or whatever happens here in San Benito County with regard to trees, the county is protected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich Brem?
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Rich Brem. I've been a resident of Ridgemark in San Benito County for 37 years, and the last 5 months have been very disturbing to me to see the destruction that a developer can cause. So I am here to support the tree ordinance, and I appreciate you listening to us. I would say, after talking to some people in other cities close by that have tree ordinances, a sunset clause I think would be something you shouldn't do. I know you have to consider that, but I think we need something in this county to protect us, because we are one of the beautiful counties that has not grown fast, and it's going to start. It has started, and when you get developers like Dan Balcazar had said, it takes a long time to build these developments and go through the process, and I think it's very important that we have this. I appreciate some of the changes where you can have a single tree removed. That's wonderful. And anyway, it could happen in any of our districts. I want to thank Supervisor Munzer for helping Ridgemark people through this, but I also appreciate all of your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody from the audience? Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I'm still Marvin Jones. This is an interesting ordinance that you have here. I was looking on page 68 of your handout there. And also in the supporting information before that, you left out plum trees. You got anything against prunes? Of all the trees that are exempt, flowering trees and cherries and olives, you did not include plums. I would recommend that you include plums. And then on page 68 there, where you got started into the whereas, some of them were quite interesting. First one there, that whereas trees absorb carbon dioxide and other pollutants. What other pollutants do they absorb? I know the Supreme Court of the United States said carbon dioxide is a pollutant. They've been wrong on other issues in the past. In my opinion, they were wrong on this one as well. You know, at 400 parts per million carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, this time of year it may be a little higher before the growing season. There are about between 2 and 3 trillion metric tons of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. That's a 3 with 12 zeros behind it. All the trees in San Benito County won't make a speck of difference in that. 3 trillion metric tons, and we're going to make an impact on that with this ordinance. Well, whatever. But then on the first whereas there, it's all carbon dioxide. Second whereas, I could almost hear violins playing there. Man, it was almost poetic there. Third one, you might want to reword that. It was a little ambiguous. Whereas trees screen dust, and increase the likelihood of flooding. Is that what you mean? Do you mean trees increase the likelihood of flooding? That's ambiguous. You might want to change that a little bit. And those last 2 whereases on page 68 have the usual, we, the San Benito County Board of Supervisors, know better than you, property owner, that we know better than you. That's enough for now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to comment on this item before I bring it back to the board?
I'm Yolanda Gale. I live in 11 Florence Court. I've been here 18 years. I've been up here before, and I just want to say that I approve this new ordinance, and a few of the new points were very good, and I appreciate your consideration on the saving our trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Supervisor Batella?
Okay. The only question I have a question on, why does it go back to the planning commission if we approve it today?
It's a zoning ordinance, because it's a permanent zoning ordinance. It has to go to the planning commission for adoption, for recommendation to the board of supervisors for the final adoption of it's a zoning ordinance. It's in the zoning chapter. The only reason it didn't have to go to the planning commission for the urgency ordinance is because it was an urgency ordinance. And it has a different adoption mechanism. So this is.
Shouldn't it go before the planning commission first and then come back to us
Well,
to make the final?
We have an interesting little code section in our county code that we're in the process of changing that says there's 2 reasons that come to the Board of Supervisors first. One is to see whether there's anything that you wanted to have in the ordinance before it goes to the Planning Commission, because once it goes to the Planning Commission, they're recommending it be adopted in that format to the Board of Supervisors. So if there's any changes that you want, we wanted to get those changes incorporated before it went to the Planning Commission. And second of all, we have a section in our county code that says changes to the zoning code have to be adopted or initiated by a resolution of intention by either Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors. So that's the resolution of intention that's before the board today. So there's 2 reasons.
Because, yeah, I would think that we would rather have the absolute final product after it's gone through, a staff review and then planning commission review, and then we make the final decision. That's kind of how it kind of works in my mind.
And it can. If you want to, if you want me to tell the planning commission to, like they can make any changes that they want tomorrow, and that you're open to considering any changes that they bring forth, they can modify it still tomorrow if they want at the planning commission level. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any additional input from the board.
Yeah, and, hearing from a couple of speakers concerned about the sunset clause, and one of the concerns that I have, it's not so much at sunsetting as much as, how we implement and procedurally handle the new ordinance and see how we could manage it and whether it fits and we have the right provisions in it. Because I agree that this is a real good thing, to protect some of the, the qualities of a neighborhood. But that's what's kind of in my mind about the sunset clause. Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Yeah, thank you. I think we definitely need to protect our trees. It's very important. From my past experience as a supervisor, I've seen some good intended ordinance become an issue down the road, and I need to make sure that there's a flexibility for us to make any corrections or adjustments that need to occur, you know. So I will support the sunset clause. I also believe that protecting the trees are important, and this will give an opportunity for us to do a trial run to make sure that our trees are protected, and that this ordinance here is right, or maybe we need a little tweaking here or there, and that will afford us that opportunity with that sunset clause. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, I as well, you know, I'm not a big fan of the sunset clause. You know, I would hope that we could, you know, any type of ordinance we pass isn't perfect, you know, and we don't have some stuff, a lot of the policies and the ordinances that we pass don't have a sunset clause. I understand the need for a sunset clause, but I would hope that we could do without it, because you know, we could always revise it. You know, we had a growth control ordinance. It didn't have a sunset clause, and we eliminated it. We had that, what was it called, the Pergy law. It didn't have a sunset clause, so we eliminated it. You know, I just think that a sunset clause is not necessary. I think that this is something that not only is needed in Ridgemark, but is needed throughout our county. You know, because I think when you think about trees and whatnot, you know, for me, it's about our sustainability as a county and as a community. You know, everything that we want to do. You know, we want to do a regional park. You know, and what's a park with, you know, without the beauty of trees and whatnot? And I just think it helps. I think a lot of what the speakers have said, you know, how you can, you know, link trees to property values or the increase in our property values, the beauty of our county, all that is true. So I hope that we can do without a sunset clause. But also, I understand the need to have exemptions, right? So what kind of exemptions, if you, I know you probably already have addressed it in the past, Barbara,
Okay, let me go over them.
but I think that if we have a strong set of exemptions, we could do without a sunset clause, in my opinion.
The exemptions are on page 74. It's the trees that do not meet the definition of tree. So, for example, if they're already dead, trees that are damaged to such they're damaged by thunderstorms, windstorms, floods, earthquakes, etc., and determined to be dangerous by a peace officer, fireman, civil defense official, or code enforcement authorization, when that's authorized in writing. When it's determined, removal is determined necessary by fire department personnel engaged in fighting a fire. Trees planted, grown for nursery businesses. Trees that are required maintenance, removal action for protection of existing electrical power or communication lines for public utilities. Trees that are determined to be an imminent threat to public health, safety, welfare, as determined by the Director of Planning and Building Services or Public Works Director. The trees that are located within proposed or existing public right-of-ways where removal or relocation is necessary to protect line of sight, or removal would benefit roadway usage such as road widening. Trees removed pursuant to a permit that's issued by state or federal regulatory agency. It's probably not going to be that common, but we put it in there. Trees determined by a certified arborist that the tree is diseased or has received insufficient water to a degree that it's reasonably unlikely that the tree can be fully restored to a condition of good health. And that one already has been used since the moratorium was in effect. When trees are removed as part of a development process that's been considered under CEQA, and the project considered the removal of designated trees, or the removal of trees is contained in the landscape plan submitted in compliance with the condition of approval for the project, and any tree whose trunk is fully located within the boundaries of a fully fenced rear yard or side yard on a developed residential parcel.
Okay. Well, I think that's, you know, is thorough, and I think that, you know, that is something that I can support, certainly. And so why we need a sunset clause, you know, I don't think we need it. So,
Okay.
thank you, Madam
Supervisor Menzer, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the comments of our other board members and thank the members of the public that have come to many meetings speaking on this issue. Yes, this kind of came to the forefront because of the issue in Ridgemark, but my view of this is that it is a ordinance to protect the whole county, the areas that we have built up. I don't want to see this ever happening again, where all of a sudden a large amount of trees are cut down without some kind of process having gone through for the residents to know what's going on. The sunset clause, because this is kind of a different ordinance for us, I didn't have a problem with that, because then we could review it at the end of the 5 years. So whether it has the sunset clause in it or doesn't, I'm okay with that. But I definitely think we need an ordinance to protect our trees, to protect the residents that expect trees to be in their neighborhood, and give them a voice on that matter. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. My comments are related to the last meeting that we had regarding this issue. This is not really a county issue. It is a Ridgemark issue. And for me, it's unfortunate. I mean, I love trees. They're essential. I've planted a lot of them in my lifetime. They're essential to life, but I want to look beyond just Ridgemark. This is going to affect every small homeowner in San Benito County. And we all know that most tree trimming is done by unlicensed property owners like myself. But will I now have to pay a professional so that there is no risk of me doing it wrong and that tree dying, and now I'm going to have to pay some sort of penalty? I will become actually criminal based on our ordinance. Who's taking on the cost? If there's issue with a county not approving a tree, it is at the cost of the county to make sure that they have a licensed arborist that will direct them. So now we have additional costs. I believe it's overburdensome. If there was going to be a tree ordinance, it really should be about future development in areas that have been used by public or private open spaces. Those are the things that we should be addressing. But to add additional burden to property owners who, at their own expense, put these trees in without actually asking anybody, am I protecting from wind? Am I protecting from erosion? Am I doing this? No, we just did it. And then when we want to remove it, now we can't, because it is doing everything that we didn't even plan for it to do in the first place. So I believe that this is burdensome. I think we should have addressed it for development in the future and not for property owners, as much as I value trees. So thank you. I will not be supporting this ordinance. Okay, I will bring it back to the board for a decision unless there's further question or comment.
I just have a question. Supervisor Rivas made some, strong points as far as not having a sunset clause and having this go back to the Planning Commission, for, some input. And then if we approve it today, does it make sense for us to reconsider what they suggested, or, I just kind of have a problem or an issue with it going back to the Planning Commission and then coming back to us with maybe, I would imagine that they would have some revisions, or maybe they have ideas about the sunset clause similar to Supervisor Rivas. And, I certainly, still have concerns how we implement the ordinance under, enforcement and the process of issuing, permitted tree removals. And that's a big deal to me, as far as, I don't want to just pass ordinances and just for the sake of doing it and not having the staffing, the ability to enforce it as well. But that's just a thought.
Yeah. Well, I think what Barbara's trying to direct us is that per our own ordinance and regulation on how we move forward with any kind of zone, changes, it has to come before us to make recommendations to the Planning Commission, and then in turn, they come back with a final.
Right, they can still make changes tomorrow.
Right.
If they wanted to see a different type of ordinance. But it's brought for the board just for two reasons. One is so you can provide any sort of direction if you wanted to provide direction. And second of all, just so you can adopt the resolution of intention.
Okay.
So, I mean, so basically, if the planning commission has changes, then it would come before the board, and then there's two things the board can do at that time. One is it can adopt the ordinance as the planning commission recommends, or it can change it, and usually when you change it, you send it back to the planning commission for them to consider the changes.
So we would avoid some of those changes having to come back if we direct them from here, so I
Okay.
think that that's the intent.
All right, okay.
Supervisor Munzer, you had a comment?
Well, I was gonna ask for a clarification from Barbara, in that the action today is not approving the ordinance, it's just doing the resolution of intention to amend the article, correct?
Yes, it's not adoption of the final ordinance.
Someone has to do that, either this body or the planning commission, and because we started this process, then it basically are,
Right. It has-
we should do that.
It has to come back for the board after the planning commission approves the final format of the ordinance. So it will come back to the board. If the planning commission approves it, tomorrow night, it could come back as early as March 17th for final adoption.
Now, just on the chance that the planning commission doesn't approve it, it still comes back to us, right?
If, for example, they wanted to continue it to their March meeting, for example, they wanted more time to think
No,
about
but I
it.
they voted it down.
It's a recommendation, I believe.
If the planning commission voted it down,
It would,
it could still come back to us, right?
It's a
It'd still come back to
recommendation,
you.
I
It's a
believe.
recommendation only.
So
Yes.
it would either, the planning commission would not vote it down. The planning commission would either recommend not to adopt the
Okay,
ordinance
okay,
or to
okay, thank
adopt
you.
the ordinance.
Thank you,
Okay, is
thank
that
you.
clear?
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
Okay.
Barbara, I have one more question. If somebody wants to remove a tree and, they can just stop watering it, let it die, and if it gets bad enough, then it's cause for removal. No
That's
matter how
true.
beautiful, how big, how much the neighbor liked it. just
Unfortunately,
let
that's
it-
true, because once you stop watering a tree, we can't compel the people to water we can't compel landowners to water their trees. So if they stop watering it and it dies, then it's not subject to the ordinance. Or if it becomes in such poor health that the arborist determines that it cannot, be
Survive.
restored, yes.
Yeah,
So-
that's just another flaw with this ordinance, so.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll bring it back for a decision then.
If there's no other comments or questions, then I'll move that we make the CEQA findings set forth in attachment A to the AIT, adopt resolution of intent to amend Article 7 of Chapter 25.29 of San Benito County Code.
Second.
Under the
Question
question,
in a second, there's a discussion?
Barbara, as the motion on the table dictates a sunset of 5 years?
Yes.
Okay.
As it would be presented to the planning commission for
commission.
their
For
consideration.
their for their recommendations, right?
Recommendation.
Not consideration, recommendations.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? 4-1?
Thank
Okay,
you.
we're going to take a break. Barbara, were you going to say something?
No, just thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We're going to take a short break, and we'll come back for item number 11, I believe.
I'm sorry.
go ahead and resume?
You have to put in these hubs out there. Yeah, so we got approached and said, no, how should we?
Okay, we'd like to continue our meeting with item number 11. CAO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this item is brought to us by our librarian, Nora Conte, and she went, I think, here a few minutes ago. She just stepped out, I think. Maybe, can you grab her, Byron, if you don't mind? Well, I'll go ahead and open it up. This is with regards to CNEC and approving additional bandwidth for the library. So this particular item will be giving them about 1 gig of throughput for the public, for the residents within our community at the library, which is very significant. We currently have about 20 megabits per second of throughput for internet access for the entire county for employees. Obviously, that's a 5.9 circuit, but it's, a very solid circuit that we have for the county, but this is significantly more throughput for the residents within our community. So we have John Shelley here. Maybe you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the technicalities of that while we're waiting for Nora.
Sure. So thank you, Board and Madam Chair. Yeah, so currently the internet connection that the library uses for the public is a 5 megabit connection. And that is like 10 years ago, that was really fast speed for home use. With today's internet, it's basically back like dial-up. So it's a very slow connection. This new connection, as CEO Espinoza was saying, it's a 1 gigabit connection. So for public internet access, it'll be quite fast, very speedy for the public, so they could go in and do the research that the library is setting up for them. And here's Nora, the librarian, so she can go in and answer any just regular questions for you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Board members, and good morning, members of the public, and those of us that are listening at home, good morning to you too. This is a very exciting step that we could take at a nominal cost for our county. I tried to do a brief explanation of the cost, and it's pretty clear. Does anyone have any questions about the cost?
No, well, I just want to say that we're actually getting most of this money back.
Absolutely.
So we're getting a lot for a couple, I want to say, yeah, $2,140.
Exactly.
And if we go later on in the agenda, we're going to have a presentation by our CAO, and the things that have been done at the library, this could be so beneficial to continue providing that kind of advantage service to the community. So it certainly is.
Absolutely. If I may just go on for just a little bit, is that okay for a minute? This will afford, the library is a great equalizer where members of the community will be able to come in to have access to to a faster internet, that they will be able to access all types of information. So whether it's health, whether it's business, whether it's applying for benefits, whether it's for studying, practicing on a test and that type of thing, for the library to be able to provide training to the public, not having to do one-by-one training, but being able to train 8 people at a time, a secured, faster internet where it's not as staff consuming, and it's more efficient use of staff time. So I'm really excited about this. I'm excited about the partnership with Khalifa and CNEC to the Kelrin network, because it's certainly going to really get us on that fast internet highway.
Okay, thank you, Nora. I appreciate it. Any comments from the public?
Yes, I have Mary Schneider.
Mary Schneider, President, Friends of the Library. Just wanted to support this because I feel it will make using the library less frustrating, both for staff and for patrons. As it is, the library gets fairly overcrowded, and I envisage a development future where it will become even more overcrowded. So having the idea of more internet services at a faster speed, and hopefully some things that can be downloaded and taken home on Kindles and things of that nature would just kind of help promote the positive experience at the library. But I think in the long run, talking about the future, you're going to have to think other things that are also outside the box in addition to enhanced internet. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other cards?
Carrie and Friend.
Harriet Brin, resident, and I'm also a board member of Friends of the Library. I really appreciate you having this opportunity to support this, because as a resident and using my own computer, I know how important it is to have faster access, and there are so many residents in our community that have used the library as their facility to do that. So this would really help those people that can't afford their own computers. And also, it's such a nominal cost for us to get on this that I really hope that you approve this action. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet. Any other comments from the public?
I'm sorry to move it a little slow. Good morning again. Marty Richmond from Hollister. I also support this, and I also would like to back up Mary's comments that we're going to have to do some other things too, because the demand for those services just keeps growing, and we want citizens here who are interested in the education of their children. Those are the types of people we would like to have in the county, because they will better the schooling system and they will better our county. And one of the first things these folks do when they're looking for a place to live is to look at the school systems and how they rate, and they look at public services such as the library to see how it rates. As you well know, I don't want to go too far off this subject, but as you well know, the school bond, the library bond did not make it through the state this year, so there was no money for libraries. But you're going to have to think about this, and but this cannot be an end-all and be-all. You're going to have to think about perhaps next year, hopefully that bond will come through, and we will need the political leadership that will go out and stir up the hastings and get people to back up our need for a better library and a new facility that just does justice to this county, the number of people who live here and work here and want a better life. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments from the public? Any more cards, Jan? No? Okay, I'll bring it back to, oh, go
I
ahead,
have one
Nora.
more thing to say. This process of getting here has taken us quite a while, and I want to commend my staff for their openness to train, to new opportunities to learn more about technology. I want to thank them for being there to learn and to strengthen their skills, their focus on this. I would like to thank the Board of Supervisors for allowing us the opportunity to acquire those grants that would provide training for our staff so they could empower the public with and do the best we can within the confines of what we have. I'd like to commend our CAO for his support in the area of technology, because no one does anything alone. Leadership is collective. And I wanted to take just a moment to acknowledge that. I also would like to thank our county council for their support and going over this with me. And I definitely would like to thank our IT department for working in concert with me in getting us to this place and hopefully taking us forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nora? This agreement is from December 2, 2014. Why is it only before us now?
No, it came before you in November as a letter of intent to want to go forward. And we were waiting for more information. So we got more information in regarding to the cost, in regarding to specific dates. But actually, that's when they're starting. Although, to start this project starts July of next year, next fiscal year, not this year.
So we won't start paying this higher, it looks like it's going to cost us about $70 a month more.
Yes, sir, it is.
That $70 a month will kick in of July 1st of this year or December?
30 days, we have to give the payments 30 days. There's 30 days to each invoice.
So when are those invoices starting?
In July.
Not till July?
Oh, of course.
Oh, okay, okay. And then I didn't see in this, is this basically hardwiring all the computers in the library, or is there a Wi-Fi connection?
Asking the
So the internet connection, it's just the internet. So it isn't the individual computers themselves. There is a grant that is also part of this that the library is applying for that will allow for the upgrade of the computer infrastructure that is actually at the library. So we have an internet connection that is the monthly cost that's going on here, and then there is the actual infrastructure itself, that there is a grant that the library is applying for.
What happens if we don't get that grant?
Okay. We qualify for this grant because of our budget is per capita. So it's not a question of not receiving, it is a question of receiving because we qualify for it already, and it is based on our per capita cost. Also, we will not have to do any matching of these funds.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes, please.
So whether they have new computers in there or old computers, it doesn't matter. It's for internet access. It's the actual internet access that...
My original question was this new 1 gigabyte per second speed, was that being hardwired into the existing computers, or was it a Wi-Fi connection?
Okay, so
It's a fiber internet connection.
So it's hardware.
It's
hardware.
Be hardwired into the library.
Yeah, which then you can connect a device to that hardware that has wireless capability that sends a signal out that you can have your laptop be able to attach to that.
This other grant that
That's-
they're talking about is for new computers.
No,
the infrastructure. So the
Okay,
wiring,
what is your
access
definition of
points.
it?
So the infrastructure is the wiring that actually connects the devices, so computers, printers, access points, to the equipment that actually will connect to the fiber internet connection.
But you already have a system right now in place.
We already have a system right now. This is just going to upgrade what we currently have.
Okay. Supervisor Munzer, you still have the floor?
Okay, I think maybe they're getting in over my head on actually what's happening. So, but if we approve this, we'll start using it in July. We'll start paying for it in July. We'll start using it in July, irregardless of this grant that we're applying for.
No. Here's the timeline. The process will start July of 2015. It will be launched 9 months or so later. The reason that we need to apply for these additional funds is because we need to get new switches and modem routers and access points and these type of things so that we will be able to go forward once we launch.
Did that answer your question? Let me make sure that Supervisor Munzer has...
No, it increases my concerns, but
Okay.
I'll give it to the
Give
floor.
it to Supervisor De La Cruz. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Madam Chair, so by moving forward with this, you have the hardware currently today to handle the 1 giga speed, correct?
Yes.
You do. And what you're trying to do is trying to upgrade, you're trying to add more capacity to your services. And the way you do that, the way you finance that is by this other grant that's coming around the corner.
Correct.
So if you don't get that grant, that 1 giga is still be productive in the community because our citizens will be able to use the computers that you guys offer currently right now, that you don't need to replace right now, at a higher speed, and you could download more applications, more educational material at a faster speed.
That is correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam
All
Chair,
right.
apparently Supervisor Dela Cruz asked the question better than I did. Thank you.
About time I got a good one.
Oh, you got a good one. Thank you, Supervisor De La Cruz.
Actually,
One more question?
Yes, Madam. I think this is very important. I think I'm excited. When I go to the library, I actually see your library. The computer's booked all the time. And I actually, once in a while, talk to them, and they said, oh, this is great. Just imagine it. Giving them greater speed is very important in the community. And in fact, Supervisor Martinez, I think, is correct, is that once they have the capacity for wireless communication, just the library will now become the hub for San Benito County, and that's exciting. And that's what we want.
Yeah.
Good job, Nora.
Thank you. I also would like to say, I would like to acknowledge the Friends of the Library because we knew that in April of 2014, XP was no longer going to be supported. So they went out in concert with the community to raise monies, and on September the 18th of this year, the adult lab was open with 8 new computers. So it is a journey that does not start now, but started 2.5 years ago, and it did take all of us to help us to get there. I appreciate all of your questions and concerns because I think that's good ground upon which we can build.
Okay, thank you. And CAO, do you have anything in closing?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'll bring it back for a decision.
Madam Chair.
I just want to, state that we're going in the right direction. Worst case scenario that could happen is that we're have to come up with $17,000 for the project. That's what we're supposed to get reimbursed from the grant. And I think we have high probability getting that money.
Absolutely.
And you've done a great job looking and finding that. And this helps us move forward into the future because the library, as we all know, is be about technology and what you could get off of the internet. And, the old days was the books, but I think going forward into the future, we'll have a lot more needs, as a couple of the speakers had stated. And we have to continue. I'm going to take this platform. Supervisor Munzer had the idea of some sort of impact fee for the library. We have to get that in place so we could accommodate for the future growth and use of library, as it was noted earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor, were you ready
Yes,
to make a motion?
I'm ready to make a motion. I just feel that we need to move forward on this. Give you a perfect example of the Gilroy Library. Wow, what an amazing library, and that's where we need to go.
We will be the equal of San Francisco Public and the Peninsula Library System.
That's
The big- Those systems.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve item 1, 2, and 3 per transmittal.
Okay, I will second that motion. Okay, any further questions? Or all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, board members.
Thank you. Item number 12, CAO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we're on item number 12 this morning. This is coming out of our Health and Human Services Agency, and we have our Director, James Riding-Sword, here to discuss this. Basically, this is approving a waiver of County Policies and Procedures Handbook Rule 1H. .3, prohibiting CalPERS benefits for temporary employees for Office Assistant 2 in Health and Human Services. So we have Jim here to talk about that. Jim?
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, first of all, I just want to give you a little background on this. This was a position that had been filled by what we call one of our subsidized employment people who subsequently successfully moved on to full-time employment. So what we're doing right now is trying to fill this in while we're having discussions during our budget-making time so that we ensure some continuity of service, and then we plan to come back to the board with our final recommendations on staffing during the budget. So we hope that you will approve this today.
Thank you, Jim. Any comments from the public? Okay, questions or comments from the board?
Madam Chair, very simple. Temporary employees, is this that plan rate that you introduced to us a while back, or this is totally different? A pool? Yeah, have a pool? This is not?
No.
So you're bringing in a temporary employees to fill in jobs that a full-time can't handle it?
We don't have a full-time position for this right now, and that's what we're planning to discuss as we're going through our budget planning as to whether this needs to be a full-time position or whether we need to move forward with it as a temporary position in some form.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay, what is the pleasure of the board?
Move per staff recommendation.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 13, we're going to be getting our update. CAO?
Yes, your board has requested staff to come to every single board meeting and explain to you where we're at with the general plan. So I've asked Byron to attend this meeting, as well as putting together a schedule as per your request. So we have Byron here to talk about that. Thank you, Byron.
I have brought for you, this is the same schedule that you saw last time. We are in the middle of February. I want to let you know that we're still undergoing legal review, and that this is not wasted time either. I want to make that clear, that while it's undergoing legal review, we're also fine-tuning the document. The rest of staff is as well, and seeing things. So I think it's valuable that we're taking the time to go through this document at a legal review level, but also the additional time that staff's been able to put into it is going to be worthwhile. So that's where we are, and we'll be back on March 3rd to give you another update.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'd like to ask council, put him on the spot. I know that you were going to we approved some additional funding for the legal review, and just an update on that end of it.
Sure. Yes, Madam Chair. The board did appropriate monies to assist the county counsel's office in performing the legal review. That legal review has been underway now for approximately 2 to 3 weeks. It is proceeding smoothly. There is no major issues that I need to inform the board of at this time, and we anticipate that the review will be done by March 3rd, 2015. Of course, the document is not perfect. There are some areas of concern that we're addressing, but we're working smoothly with EMC to have those areas taken care of. But at this point, based on what I'm being told by our attorneys, who I trust, is that the review is proceeding smoothly and should be accomplished on time.
That is wonderful news. Thank you so much. Any comments from the public regarding this item? Bring it back to the board. We don't have to make any decision, just accept your report, and we thank you. This is exactly what we wanted to be updated on at every meeting, so thank you. Okay, we'll go on to item number 14.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this item's coming out of our Public Works Department. As you'll be seeing in the next couple of items down, we're going to have a review of the county and what we've done over 2014. And one of those items is with reference to the fiber installation that was done for the county, basically an INET build-out that was performed. It was a joint project between the city and the county, and we had Public Works spearheading that. This particular item has to do with the fiber and the actual project itself and kind of where we're at with that. So we have Joe Hordell, he's our interim Public Works Director, here to talk about this particular item. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Ray. So this morning is one of those things that I don't like coming to talk to the board about, which is, as we've gone through the project, the fiber project, which is up and running at this point, that we identified some problems as we went through the construction process and bidding process. Associated with that, there is a big number, about $160,000 tied to this project of increased cost. As we laid out in the staff report several things related to that, and I want to walk through each one of those because this is really important to kind of understand what's going on. First, as part of bidding this project, we assumed that we did not need to go get permits from Caltrans when, for crossing Highway 25 going down San Felipe Street. And that was a result of the county, the COG had not turned over to Caltrans those improvements. When we built the bypass, it was still in our control. At the time this contract was moving forward, unbeknownst to staff that was working on the contract, that transfer actually happened, and now we were subject to Caltrans permitting. That threw us for a little bit of a loop because their contract with the contractor required them to be under construction underneath that road within 30 days of us lighting the contract. That clearly didn't happen because we didn't have approval for that to happen. That added about, it was $15,000 to $20,000 in cost for a number of pieces. Part of it was mobilization. They had already drilled the majority of the conduit, had pulled conduit throughout our project, with the exception of going underneath the roadway. So they had to bring back their crews to do that work. We also had to deal with requirements that Caltrans added into the project that were not standard, such as putting slurry or concrete over top of the conduit in the Caltrans right-of-way, as well as actually cutting the fiber because they had already started pulling the fiber cables through the rest of the system before we finally got the Caltrans permit, and that required splicing 96 strands of fiber, which is about $100 a strand is what our cost is when we bring it into buildings. So things like that added up really quick. We also ran into an issue up on top of the hill where the water tanks are, the county's IT infrastructure, that we were doing the drilling for conduit and literally ran into a foundation retaining wall that was in no maps that we were aware of, that the city had not told us about, and the contractor did not know about. And as a part of our obligations to provide information to the contractors bidding on a job site is to give them our best information of what else is out there, and that was, when you go through the types of things that come back to us through contingency change orders, those are the types of things that start popping into that. So there was work, lost time, as well as repairs to the wall that after we punched holes through it to get the conduit kind of working around it, the city required us to replace it back, and so we actually had to go back and fix this wall that we didn't know was out there. The third and the biggest one is related to the alternate locations, and so there were a series of locations that in the original proposal the county put forward a bid to connect the essential facilities. So there were the police departments, sheriff's department, the downtown NOC, but we also included some other facilities that while we were doing this work thought made sense, and so the jail was one of those, Vets Hall, community center across the street over here. So there were I think it was 5 sites that we had identified that we wanted additional opportunities. We weren't guaranteeing that we were going to take advantage of them, but depending on how the bids came in, we said we wanted to do it. And so each of the bidders went through and bid on those additional locations based on the prices that came in and the total budget that was set aside of $650,000. Staff proceeded with doing all 5 of those locations. The real battle then became as the contractor started building the system and pulling conduit and fiber through this route is that in our bid documents we talked about 17,500 feet of conduit system. We amended that through an addendum to take it to 18,800 feet. When all was said and done, the contractor has said they pulled about 29,000 feet of conduit, distance, not individual conduits, and our staff actually went out and measured it, and we came up pretty close to that. So we're not disputing that, you know, it's 18.8 versus 29,000. There's a substantial difference, and the price of conduit and fiber is, you know, $20 a foot. It adds up really quick, and that's really where this comes down to. I think really the challenge is how the ad-alts were put forward and how we described those. That staff, I think, did a really good job trying to go through and not spend a lot of money on engineering and producing, big construction documents, is we went through and put together maps and showed where the routes were going to go and asked the contractors to figure out the best ways of getting there. But we laid out routes with them. Unfortunately, there's confusion between parties about what the 18,000 feet related to. Was that the total of all construction, or was it the base construction? And I think that's one that I think you can argue it both ways. I went back and reread it again this morning, just to be clear about it. Is that I think the parties have different views of it, but in the interest of trying to go through and resolve this, rather than going through and kind of spending a lot of time litigating it, we went back and looked at kind of what was the system that was installed, what were the prices that were quoted for it, what were the other bidders bidding onto it to see, is this something where a contractor was trying to lowball it and work their way around to get ultimately more money? And out of this, our opinion and my opinion to the board is that the contractor, the price that we potentially ultimately will pay is still cheaper than what the second bidder would have had for all of their alternate locations, that by about $88,000, $90,000, that we're within the budget for the $650,000 for the project, and that we actually have a system better than what we had asked to get built, is that we have put in extra conduits in places, that the minimum number of fiber connecting locations, we've gotten the 96 as the backbone, but in other places where we asked for less, really a low number, like 12, the contractor installed a much larger set of fiber into all those locations. So we have a larger dark fiber infrastructure built into this also. And it is up and running, and so we've been testing it, using it since December. It's met our objectives from that end of it, and so staff is asking for the board's concurrence to approve an amendment to the contract to increase the amount. We also ran into a sewer line, or the contractor did, and that would be one of the things that is a contractor's obligation. We had already agreed, or we had already engaged a local contracting firm to fix that because that problem shut down the neighborhood, as well as some damages for one of the homeowners who had sewage come up into the house because of that. And so we are asking to go through and pay that to kind of a lump sum to deal with closing out all issues, concerns related to this project and to be done with it. So staff's recommendation to the board is to amend the contract for the $141,000 to the contractor. That is a number that we reduced from their original claim to deal with the claim for Chapin, who we hired to go and resolve the sewer issue, and also for the homeowner for $240.
Thank you, Jim. Any comments from the public?
Yes, I have Mark Hanson.
Madam Chair and the board, I'm just here representing the contractor. If you had any questions back to the contractor of anything that we could possibly help you with. The county staff has been very good with meeting us. From our viewpoint, between the two entities, any successful job takes the work of all the people involved, county inspectors and everybody, and jointly this was a challenging task, but it was very successful, and we look to resolve this, and Joe and all his people have been very good in working with us, and we ask that you approve this, and if I can answer any questions at all for you, I'd be willing to do so.
I just want to clarify something, and Joe, you alluded to it, but I want to make absolutely sure. It says on here that the money that was paid to Don Chapin Company will be deducting those costs from the final amount, meaning that the contractor is taking full responsibility for that. So we won't have to pay. We'll get reimbursed, in other words.
Yeah. So what we kind of worked out a total number, and that was the $171,000 and some change number, looking through the different claims back and forth. So out of that, we're holding back the dollars for Chapin, so 141 is going to the contractor.
Oh, okay, so
20-some
that's
thousand's
already
going
been, it's already been,
Right,
it's
so that's-
reflected in the
That's why I
in the
laid it
amount.
out the way I did.
Oh, okay, very good, yeah, because I was hoping that you were going to say that, because I feel that that is a responsibility of the contractor, but, okay, that's, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Supervisor Patello?
Yeah, so all in all, this project came within our budget parameters.
We had set aside $650,000 in the original budget, and the one thing I did forget to mention, this is a project funded half by the city, half by the county. And so when we started this project, would have been $325 out of each if we went to that full amount. Obviously, our goal is to do less than that. The other thing I do need to note is that there is a separate $217,000 that the county owes the city for the PTAF, which I think is property tax.
PTAF.
And so this was one of the projects that we were looking at of how to go through and settle the books with the city. And so that is part of the math that we're also figuring out of, with that credit, how much is the county responsible for the city? So I can walk through all those numbers too if you're interested, or.
No, I think I understand.
But we are under the 650 that we originally approved.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Just put a little more pressure on the city to pay part of that extra, that would be nice.
Well, and they are looking to use the RFP that we used for this to actually go connect a couple of their city facilities that we weren't able to do with this job. And so obviously, we're going to take some things we learned with it, but I'll see if I can put like an overhead charge to that to
That would be
recoup
good.
some of
Joe, I think, I trust that you'll negotiate this to the benefit of the county, so thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you. I'll bring you back to the board for a decision.
Move per staff recommendation.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Second. Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, we'll go to item number 15, and CAO?
Thank you. Yes, this particular item is also coming out of our Public Works office. We have Joe here again to talk about this. This is the adoption of goals and policies for Mello-Roos community facility districts, and in particular, really addressing our growth with Santana Ranch and also to the Del Webb, the importance of getting this moved forward. So we have Joe here to talk about that.
Thank you, Ray. So this is a follow-up discussion from December. We brought forward conceptual goals or draft goals and policies. For the board's consideration, the goals and policies, I think we've captured all the things that the county has talked about that we want to protect ourselves for. We have come back and looked at it following the board's action. So Shirley and I have thought about this and kind of read through the things that really were important, and we've left open the kind of the toehold about revenue neutrality. So that's really a county specific, so you see that in the actual resolution here as a part of the authorized services. So it acknowledges that there are services that we do with like CSAs that are directly in that subdivision. What this allows us to do is to look at things that are also supporting that subdivision. So you'll see county-wide roadways, emergency services, those types of things. So it's acknowledgement that the development comes in, it benefits from investments that we've made or costs that we're going to incur to continue to support that. So we've built that into this document. We're just now starting with the Stonegate developers. They've now made a request for creating a CFD. So it's one of the things I have on my to-do list for this week is to get the executive team for the county to now start working through this so we can analyze it, figure out how we bring it back to the board, kind of work with the developer on it. It is one that there is a development agreement that has some discussions about dollar amounts for CFDs, and so part of it we're also trying to match through what are in-track responsibilities, things that they would have to do with or without a CFD, and what are the things that are to deal with revenue neutrality to make sure those are not kind of commingled and double counted. So
Did
that's
you say
part.
Stonegate?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm
No,
Santana
that's
Ranch.
okay. I thought, well, maybe they want to change their way of doing
No,
things.
I got CSA on the brain.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Sorry.
Just wanted to make sure that it
Thank
wasn't
you.
Stonegate.
Yes.
See, that was a
Santana
test.
Ranch.
I'm sure that was a test.
See if we're awake.
So,
Apparently I wasn't.
okay, so,
So we are asking the board adoption of these, and so this does set the guiding principles of how we would look at proposals coming forward. And as with all ordinances and policies, resolutions, it is something that it's not a forever. So it's one of those things, I think, as we work through some CFDs over time, it's one of the things that's going to be worthwhile for the board and for staff to revisit and say, is it in fact hitting our objectives? But we think it's a really good starting point that's got us probably 97, 98% of where we need to be. And it does set a floor.
Yeah.
So as we bring individual CFDs forward, it does allow the staff and the board to learn from as we've been working through those and kind of keep working at what our guiding principles are. I
it's
think
very
it will serve the
comprehensive.
residents very well.
yeah, very comprehensive, and I felt that I didn't really have any questions on it. What about the rest of the board? Any questions for Joe?
No, this is a great start, beats what we have. Thank you.
Okay, I'll open it up to the public.
Marty Bishop from Hollister. As you all know, we just have not been able to generate the economic stimulus required to pay the ongoing costs of public services. That's just a fact. Impact fees are essentially capital centric. You use that money to build, a building. You use it to build a jail or whatever you use it to, but you can't use impact fees to pay a sheriff's salary, and you can't use impact fees for things like that. And somehow that has to happen in the normal, whatever normal is, in many of the way things work out economically. The amount of economic stimulus happens to support it. In our case, it doesn't. And frankly, as much as I fight about it, I just, at some point in time, you got to come to the realism nothing's happening, okay? And that the fact that half our workforce is going to Silicon Valley will probably continue. And as long as half the workforce goes there, they're going to do their shopping on the way there and on the way home because they get to pass one of the big shopping areas available to folks. And so they're on the road anyway, and they just stop and do their shopping there. They buy their groceries close to home, but groceries don't generate a lot of taxes. They buy the other stuff away from home. That's just the way it is. And I think, unfortunately, that's the way it's going to continue to be. So if you want the public services, you're going to have the Melrose taxes. And I think I support them for that reason. But I would like to warn the board about one thing. When people pay Melrose taxes, they certainly don't like it, but when they do pay it, they sure as hell start looking at where the money is being spent. And you've never seen anybody unhappier than people who are paying Melrose taxes were told they're going to get coverage by the fire department or coverage by the sheriff's department or other public services, and find out they're not getting their fair share based on what they're paying. Many a taxpayer revolt over that, I can assure you. Orange County, where a lot of people pay Melrose taxes, has been one of the places where that's happened on a number of occasions. So my only concern is if you collect the money and you promise them they're going to get something for it, they're going to be sitting there, some of them with a pen and pencil, and seeing how many times the sheriff's department car goes around in every 48 hours, and they will be sitting here telling you about it. So fairly warned is fairly warned. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Any other comments from the public? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Any questions?
No, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2015-10 with adopting goals and policies of Melrose Community Facilities District, and authorize chair to sign.
Okay. There's a motion? I'll second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the last item, but before we start this item, I'd like to kind of poll the board. Well, first of all, I'm going to ask council on the closed session items, how much time you think this may take, so that we know whether we should break for lunch after this next item.
Yeah, closed session will probably be a half hour to 45 minutes.
Okay.
An hour, half to 2 hours.
So would the board like to break for lunch and then come back for the closed session items after this presentation?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Munzer and I have a COG meeting at 1 o'clock, of unmet needs meeting that generally takes a half
Then we'll
hour,
go ahead and
45 minutes.
continue our meeting and push our council to get us out of here quickly. Okay, item number 16.
With
CEO?
that being said, can I get a 3-minute recess, just to set things up? if
Sure.
That's okay? Just
Go ahead.
real quick.
We'll
Okay.
break for 3 minutes. Thank you.
Well, then I will thank you, Matt, on the outside council, for what you like, and see if you blot out of there.
Oh, okay.
What?
To see if we're going to get out of there quickly.
Well,
Yeah, so I need the, Yeah, it's fun. I just gonna go through, I just turned it on. Beautiful.
And then you can use the pointer too if you like.
I'm here whether we break for lunch or not. I don't have a lunch date today. Today, all my time and energy is devoted to the board. I don't know about that either. Yeah, Steph agreed. Probably do it. I don't think. I don't know how long you're gonna be with this.
If we break as soon as for our closed session, will you be able to come back at 1:30?
I've never been to one of these. It starts at no. Anthony said that because we're over here.
Oh, you're not going to be here, okay.
We're over the community center.
All right.
So he said
No one's going to go to that thing.
right. So it normally takes a half hour, 45 minutes.
Like a public daytime. Is it at 1?
It's at 1. So we can just break and then come back at 1:30?
We'll have to come back to 1:30.
That's okay. But we'll announce them so that even if we're a little bit late, if they're running a little bit late.
Yeah, so we can announce, and then you can have to take public comment.
Yes, and then break. Okay, we're going to go ahead and break. Okay? Yeah. And let me talk to Jaime because he might have already been ready.
Janet?
Council introduce the closed session items and ask for public comment.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. We're on item number 16 this morning. I want to first thank the board for allowing staff to come to you this year and share with you an end-year report. This is our second annual report for you. Our first one was last year of 2013. There has been a lot of work. It has been fast and furious, and it's been we've been doing quite a bit of work. So we'll be able to see that in the presentation. With regards to the presentation, there are basically two large projects that I think are highlighted. One was the fiber project that we talked about. The ERP system was also a very, very significant project that was accomplished in the year. And you know, we'll take a look at that as well. But there's going to be a lot of departments that are going to be actually stemming different modules from the ERP system, which will help them out tremendously. So that's going to be a task item for this year, 2015. So with that being said, I'd like to go ahead and hopefully this thing works.
Reach.
Oh, maybe not. There it goes. Okay, so this year, and we're going to be taking it month to month like we did last year. I won't cover all the material. I won't highlight every single bullet. You can read that at your leisure. But there's a couple of things that we did tackle this last year. One was extending office hours, and that was, I think, key and vital. And I think this year is something that we'll have to really scrutinize and look at that as well with other departments. With regards to office hours, our clerk, recorders, and elections office, they used to be open between 9 and 1 p.m. Monday through Friday. Now they've expanded their hours Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 12, with a lunch break, and 1 to 4 p.m. So that's for the clerk, recorders, and elections office. The DA used to be open from 9 to 4. Now they're open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. As well as the library. The library was open Monday, Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., Tuesdays, Thursdays, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., and closed on Fridays. Now they're open Monday and Wednesdays, 10 to 6, and Tuesday and Thursday, 12 to 8, and open now on Fridays, 8 p.m. to 6 p.m. So it's something that we're really going to take to heart this year. If we do add staffing for some of the different offices, that's going to be something that we would like to look at. The other item here, as you can see, is the starting of the fiber project that we just discussed a few minutes ago, which is really significant. We actually went out to bid with AT&T and other companies to actually look at what the cost would be for internet, or for not internet access, but basically an iNet, a communication between office. And that was about $1 million, very close to $1 million over a 5-year period, 5-year contract. So you saw what the overall cost was, and now we have it forever. It's our own dark fiber, which we can attach any device to it to light it up at whatever speeds we want to have it, being able to pass data back and forth. So it's a significant project, and I think it was, it's very, from a cost savings perspective, it's a big thing for the county. We also started right here the approved contract amended to prepare environmental impact report for the River Parkway Regional Park master plan project. And the next one was a overall rating that was at 99.93% for the assessor's office, which was an improvement from 2009. So that's really, really significant. And
What was it in 2009?
I don't know. I don't have that number with me right now, but I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. In February, there was an agreement that was made that's been, I know, out of District 2, was requested to actually have an agreement, a tax sharing agreement with the city of San Juan Bautista, and that one actually, we were finally able to get that wrapped up in February of 2014. We had a reorg within the office. We actually moved OES from the sheriff's office to administration, and Kevin, well, you'll see here in a few minutes, has taken on that role, leading that office, and he's done really a fantastic job. We were also able to install an AED here in the county office. We then moved forward with a request from your board to move forward with the optimity study. That was at our board retreat in February, so this was brought to your board in April, and a lot of work actually was done with that as well, which we'll talk a little bit more about.
I just need to know, where is the ED?
I believe it's in the front, right in the foyer area when you walk in by the bathrooms.
Just good for all of us to know where exactly it's located. If-
So as soon as you walk in the main doors, I believe it's to the right of
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Yeah. And let's go back to that. When you look there, you look at the picture, it looks like that's the front window. When you walk up, that's the actual front window, so it's on the right-hand side.
Oh, got it.
And yes, and then we basically started the first phase of the fiber optic project. We have we had a new hire. We moved forward with hiring Ted Moran. I think Ted Moran's here for our chief probation officer. We also were able to receive a full electric vehicle for administration in this area. So whoever needs to utilize the vehicle we have a checkout list, and anyone can actually use that within the county. There was also another one, speaking about Stonegate. This particular item was awarded to Don Chapin, where we actually moved forward with replacing the water meters, and for that particular CSA 31. So I know that was an item of concern for a while, which we were able to complete that. As you can see here, this is a picture of Kevin. Kevin is our new OES services manager, so we actually hired him back in June. And also another AED was installed and approved at the city of San Juan Bautista at the community hall location. We had a new hire of Joe Hordell. He is our interim public works director in July, as well as Dr. Goel is our new community health officer. So we actually hired them back in July. Difficulties here. There we go. I'm going to have to stand up for this. In August, we, with the departing of Lisa Reinheimer out of COG, Mary Gilbert was brought on as the interim at that point. So there was a lot of HR activity over the last year, to be quite honest with you. We also approved the revised lease of the Vets Memorial Park, skate park, expanding the use of the skate park facility into a basketball court area, and that was something that your board moved forward with. As well as looking at the approval of an AT&T cell tower lease agreement to the Veterans Memorial Park for a 10-year term. So that was something that that Public Works and as well as even planning actually, I think, spent some time working on that particular item. In October, we actually received a 3-year grant. This was something that we talked about during our budget hearing process about the possibility of additional staff members in the assessor's office. That was something that we were looking at adding additional employees to help with work that would actually increase our revenues. So we did talk about the possibility of receiving a grant, and in October we were one of 8 counties that actually were able to get that grant, and it's for a 3-year grant. It's $450,000. So we've already started that process as well of hiring folks.
And was that, as a result of that, is that why I believe the reduction of Prop 8, we had time to reduce that workload?
Yeah.
Did it get affected by this?
That's a combination of that, as well as other temporary folks. That's correct, yeah. In November, we actually had the adoption of a resolution. We came to an agreement with LEMA, a Law Enforcement Management Unit, as well as, I believe, the next one we have was in December, we also had an agreement with MEG, their Management Employees Group. So there was a lot of work going on throughout the year when it came to negotiations and labor, which we did actually come to a resolution with those groups and doing, per the board's direction, to have everything equal or as best as equal as possible. So there was a lot of work that actually went on with that. Now we're kind of tailoring off into the different departments. The library sent over some pictures here of the library, and they actually received an award. The award was 21st Century Technical Skills for the Not-So-Techie, and the amount of $45,000. And they also had a summer reading program at the county fair, which I believe some of you were a part of that this last year. So they also have a new library WordPress website with the bilingual capabilities as something that they offer now. So that was also, another thing that they actually worked on, quite a few other things. With regards to technology, this particular slide shows the fiber that was discussed today. This is actually some of the fiber that's actually terminated onto a patch panel, and basically what it is it's an iNet that we actually have now connected. So the importance of this is that we have an internet access that's housed, that we actually have here. You have to have interconnection or interconnectivity of the departments. The computers need to talk with one another, and this basically gives the means to do that. In the past, prior to me being employed with the county, we really didn't have a solid way of communicating that. And on top of that, you had to have Active Directory built as well as an email system in-house. So that's all now done internally. And basically, this is the medium or the form of transport of data. And so this is really significant because everything we do now, a lot of what we do within the county is computer. Either it's through the web with some web-based apps or internally with some applications that are housed in servers. So you have to have a medium, you have to have a form of connection to be able to communicate. And so now we have this fiber that really gives us the ability for unlimited access or unlimited throughput. Planning and building, as you can see with this slide, that there is definitely a ramp up of work that's going on in planning and building. 439 building permits issued, 27 homes. We also see 75 planning projects taken in. And the third bullet there is continuing to work on large projects in San Juan Oaks, Santana Ranch, Roberts Ranch, Sunnyside Estates, Pinoche Valley Solar. So, as well as a general plan, you can see that planning and building has been working quite a bit on some pretty significant projects, and have made some significant headway on a lot of them. So, very soon we'll be coming back to your board with San Juan Oaks, the Dale Webb project. With the development agreement, we'll have that wrapped up pretty soon. And, as you can see today with today's presentation, the general plan is making progress. CSS, out of our Child Support Services. Again, you can see kind of an underlining theme with the presentation. They hired 3 new child support specialists, and there's been a lot of people retiring and moving on. So as you can see that there's quite a bit of work that's been going on internally to keep staffing levels at a minimum level to keep the work moving forward. We also see here the department maintained its performance goal measures for fiscal year 2014. Behavioral health, they had some activities for the year. They actually had a red ribbon run, a 5K run, a red ribbon calendar contest, and as well as implementing of the KDA services in partnership with the county. So this is, I guess, a significant thing that the behavioral health has worked on over this last year. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, you know, HR was instrumental in a lot of the hires for the county. They also did do a reorganization in that office. We also had they also had a very big part in the rollout of the ERP system on the second phase of the ERP rollout, which was the HR payroll rollout that actually occurred in 12/21/14, as you can see there in the last bullet. And there, you know, in the past, just so the board's aware, all the work that went into the system of our current system, our BITEC system, is done by payroll, even the HR side of the work. So we have actually moved the HR portion of that work into HR, where it should be. And they actually went in and set the new system up. So there was a significant amount of work and you know, a lot of staff time to do that. So it was a pretty big win with very few errors, to be quite honest with you. Probation department, as you can see here, there's juvenile services, juvenile work services, juvenile review board graduation, April 28th, 2014. There were 38 graduates. There was also a lot of different activities, celebrations for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then they also passed a biannual Board of State and Community Corrections inspection of the juvenile hall. So that was, you know, a good thing for the county and for probation. And this is our first selfie for the county. This is by our probation officer, chief probation officer. He was actually assisting the city with regards to the Hollister Bike Rally. There are many law enforcement agencies that actually come in and actually assist. This last year, they were able to assist the city with that. Yeah. And the integrated waste, you can see here that, and as you remember, a few years back, there was an agreement that was made, and it actually came into effect in, I believe it was April of 2014, where the landfill, the transition actually occurred, and now, you know, that agreement actually took effect. So now I believe it's Waste Connections is actually doing the operations now. GIS, basically this was put in here. There's a new web-based GIS system. There's the link there, so at your leisure, feel free to click on that link and you can actually access that. And you can see here that they did a lot of work with creating layers, new EOC layers and maps for the EOC, as well as data conversions and interactive polling for the elections office. So you can see there that there's a link there that actually shows that. Also, new district maps were created this last year.
What does EOC stand for, please?
Emergency Operating Center.
Emergency Operating Center. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then you have some of the maps here that actually you can look at here. This is the actual web GIS of our county, and parcel reports, as well as addresses, and also imagery. So I know that that particular item was brought up today by Supervisor Jerry Munzer, and talked about a little bit about imagery and how it kind of relates to GIS. So we'll be definitely getting in contact with AMBAG and our GIS office to discuss, you know, the AMBAG side of things as well. Here is a picture of the fire incidences, and again, this is, just laid out for us within the GIS system. And then the fire hazards, FEMA flood zones, and that's the presentation. So, as you can see, that there was quite a bit of work that was done this last year, and there's still a lot to do. There's, obviously a lot of people have been moving on, retiring, and there's a lot of work that we need to have done and backfilling those spaces, and working on more projects. But the projects that were done, I really feel strongly that they're kind of a foundational piece of what we can do. We can do much more and be much more efficient in the future. So we definitely look forward to that.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's a wonderful report, and we appreciate being able to see what we've accomplished. There's so much work that the staff does every single day, and to remind us of what we've accomplished in spite of budget cuts, in spite of, staff, we're short-staffed, and still a lot of work gets accomplished. So it's a reminder of that, and also a reminder of the work to be done for the following year. So thank you. Any comments from the public on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Any comments?
Yeah, I just want to thank Ray for presenting that, and that's just tip of the iceberg, really, as far as what the county is doing, and there's so much more going on besides that we all know, just working in our different committees and our projects as well. And so I feel real good about considering the staffing levels that we have, what we're able to accomplish, and that's because you got some real good department heads and real good staff working underneath them. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, that's one thing I didn't mention is that we weren't able to put everything in. I mean, there was a snapshot of 1 year. Can you imagine all the work? It would take a year to review it, almost. So
This is the condensed version.
condensed
I'm sure
version,
there's more you could add to it. But thank the staff, please, for us, when next time you have a
Will.
department head meeting, to know that we appreciate all the work that goes behind, each department. It's huge. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and then now I'll turn over to County Counsel so he can introduce the closed session items, and the public can comment on any of them before we go. We're going to break after this announcement and then come back at 1:30.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Board of Supervisors will now adjourn into closed session to discuss agenda items number 17 through 21 on today's agenda. Agenda item number 17 is to meet and confer with legal counsel regarding existing litigation pursuant to subdivisions A and D1 of section 54956.9. The name of the case is the Center for Biological Diversity versus San Benito County et al. In the Superior Court of California in the County of Monterey, filed under case number M123956. Citadel Exploration, Inc. versus the Center for Biological Diversity et al. In the Court of Appeal for the 6th Appellate District under case number H041650. Agenda item number 18 is to confer with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and the initiation of litigation pursuant to subdivision D4 of section 54956.9 involving one case. Agenda item number 19 is to confer with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and the significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivision D2 of section 54956.9 in one case. The closed session is authorized by section 54956.9 D2 and E2 due to pending employee grievances regarding on-call pay. Agenda item number 20 is not needed and shall be stricken from today's agenda. We will not be meeting in closed session to discuss that item.
Item number 20, you said?
Item number 20.
Okay.
Item number 21 is to meet and confer regarding the appointment of a county employee. That employee is the Assistant County Administrative Officer. The authority to meet can be found in California Government Code, Section 54957. Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. We'll return at 1:30 into the conference room for our closed session. Thank you.